Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Introspection from Grief to Growth. I'm your host, Amy Lindner-Lesser, and I'm really excited today to introduce my guest. My guest today is Manda Stack, who has been walking with people through the fire of change for 30 years, first as a pastor and now as a certified energy clearing practitioner and transformational coach. She has coached and counseled hundreds of people as they faced crossroads that reshaped their lives. And she brings that same depth of experience to the women she works with now. Women who feel stuck between the safety of what they have always known and the ache for something more. I understand that, and I bet you guys do too. Manda's story is proof that reinvention is possible. She left a career, a title, and an identity to follow the quiet nudge of her soul. Manda knows firsthand how terrifying that leap can feel and how life giving it is on the other side. She works now with midlife women who are navigating career shifts, empty nest, retirement, business reinvention, or seasons of deep reevaluation. Blending soulful guidance, practical strategy, and energy healing, she helps them quiet self doubt, release fear, and claim clarity, confidence, and purpose so they can finally create a life of fulfillment and freedom that feels true to who they really are. She lives in Wisconsin on 6 acres of restored prairie. I can't even imagine that, where she and her partner share their lives with two kitties who rule the household. So join me in welcoming Manda Stack. Welcome to Introspection, the podcast about moving from grief to growth. I'm Amy Lindner-Lesser, your host. Introspection started out as a podcast about hospitality, innkeeping, and innkeepers. After about a year, I realized that my life and interests have morphed from hospitality to helping others navigate from grief and loss to growth and living. In this new version of Introspection, I will be talking about my personal experiences with loss, and there are quite a few, what I've learned along the way through my professional training, as well as from my coaching experiences. I'll also be bringing in guests to share interesting ideas. So grab a beverage, find a comfy place, take a deep breath, and listen in. Welcome, Manda. I'm so happy you're joining me here.
Amy, thank you so much for generously inviting me to this conversation. I'm really looking forward to our talk.
Oh, I'm glad. And I think that our listeners will be thrilled because whenever somebody is going through a life transition or a life quake, one of the first things that they think about is, what do I do next? Where am I?
Mhm.
And I'd like to start with your own story because it's such a huge change and it took so much um, strength and commitment to make that change. I can imagine telling your family that you want to change your career, but having to tell the church and your parishioners, it's huge. We each may have conversations with God or the universe, but yours was really on a very one-to-one basis.
Boy, you said it, Amy. I thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to share my story, and I imagine that people listening can hear bits and pieces of their own times of crossroads in what I'm going to share. I was a pastor for 23 years. Loved it, loved serving and helping people and being a leader in the community. And it really lit me up. And toward the end of those 23 years, I was starting to feel a call in a different direction. I had been getting some training and certifications in coaching and energy work, energy healing for quite a while. It was a kind of a side interest of mine, and that was blooming and growing inside of me. And there came a point, if I can be a bit vulnerable, there was one Sunday after church where, one Sunday I led worship as usual, prayed, spoke with people afterwards, shook hands, and then I got in my car to drive home after the service, and I burst into tears. Yeah, and I was realizing at that point that I didn't feel like me anymore. Like I felt like I was just going through the motions, and it was such a moment of reckoning for me because I realized that I couldn't keep just putting in the just faking it till I made it anymore. Like it didn't feel genuine. It wasn't fair to myself. It wasn't fair to the church members. And so that moment really shifted something for me. It was like, okay, I can't do this anymore. I need to figure out how to make a change because I had this big dream inside for a while that was growing and growing that I wanted to have my own business, my own coaching business and work with people in a slightly different way. But I had no idea how to make that happen. So that moment in the car with the tears was a wake-up call. And so what I did was I reached out for some help. I connected with a coach and worked with that coach for a while to help me hold the vision and even put in place some practical steps on what to do next, how to start making plans for my next chapter. And I knew that it was imperative that I had some help because I had so many doubts. Like you said, Amy, I had so many fears. Like, how do I even tell people? Like, this was a call. This was a call that I had stepped into. I thought it was going to be a lifelong calling of service in the ministry. So I was also surprised that I was feeling something so strongly that I couldn't just keep going through the motions anymore. And so, over time and with the support of my coach, I did make the change. That was at this point, it was about 6 years ago now. I took the big leap, made the change, and had a beautiful farewell ceremony and celebration with the church members who were actually much more supportive and encouraging than in my mind I thought they were going to be.
Isn't that often
So,
the case that we
yeah.
invent all of these big catastrophes and how terrible something is going to be? And then we find out once we go through it, it was all in our head and nowhere else.
Boy, isn't that the case, right? You're right. I had built up so much stress and anxiety about what it was going to mean for everyone else that I kind of lost myself.
Do, do you find, I may be jumping ahead a little bit, but do you find that when you work with women that they tend to do the same thing with their lives, that they're often more afraid to move because of other people and the fear of hurting other people or their reactions than their own?
Yes, you speak a truth that I experienced and so many of my clients that I've worked with experienced as well. Like they have built a life that is good enough for a while, and um, and then they put themselves on the back burner, and they get into this pattern. I'm speaking for myself too, of putting everyone else first, and then it's hard to hear our own truth, isn't it? It's hard to hear our own truth. And I imagine some of the people listening have been in similar situations or maybe are in similar situation right now where it feels like they've outgrown their life as it's been built. There's an idea of what they want to do, but no idea how to start moving in that direction. And the pressure, the expectations that both are internal from ourselves, but also external from other people, our friends, family, colleagues, and not to mention, we'll probably talk about this too, but the financial aspects of making a career change and the unknowns of that.
Like a lot of my listeners are new widows and have maybe never even made the decision for what their career should be, that they were told as when they were young that, oh, you're going to be a teacher or you're going to be a housewife and a stay-at-home mother. And after their partner passes, it's like, oh, who am I? And am I allowed to think for myself? They've never done that before. And so it's a muscle that has to be strengthened to say, I can come first. I need to come first. And we've definitely been taught that as women in general, we let everybody else occupy maybe 98% of our head and what should be done. And we have a very small role in our own life. Um, so life transitions, life quakes, like the death of a partner, or even retirement, or being told that you need to find a new job, being fired, is like, who am I now? And that question of who am I allowed to be comes up.
Oh, such potent questions that come to us. Who am I now? Who am I allowed to be? I really love that because that was actually one of my big questions was, am I actually allowed to make a change in my life? And whether it's something external that comes to us for change, and you name some really big life changes: widowhood, losing a job not by choice. And then there are changes that we want to make, that or changes that are good, maybe empty nest. We've successfully launched our children into the world, and now we have all this time and space, and our kids don't need us as much anymore. So, who am I is probably one of the biggest central questions that we ask ourselves when we go, especially when we go through big life changes. And I have a sense that even though it's a scary question, it's a sacred question. And there's so much potency in asking that. And when you get a chance to really dive into that a bit and explore it, it can be really healing.
It's definitely scary to ask the question, and it is sacred. And to give it the time and the attention and the space that it needs is a wonderful gift you can give yourself. Um, I think that's good as we're coming up to holidays again, and to think about, what kind of gifts. We don't need things. Most of us have way too many things, but the idea of giving ourselves the gift of clarity, of the future, of security in ourselves, of peace. You and I work with very similar people, women, um, that are going through a transition, and it's a gift to take the time to
Yes, I love what you share about that. And I have a funny story about that, actually. Yes, gifting ourselves is such, what a beautiful thing. I totally agree with you. Too much stuff. Gifts of experiences and gifts of uh, self reflection are a beautiful thing. And uh, I have this. I thought this was hilarious. I have a friend who wanted to gift a friend of hers some sessions with me, some coaching sessions, because her friend was newly retired and completely confused about that big question, who am I? And other questions like, what do I really like to do? Because she'd spent so much of her working career like going 110% focused on work and other people. And then once she hit retirement, it was really disorienting. So this dear friend of hers gifted her with a few coaching sessions with me as a retirement gift. And this friend that received the gift at first was a little confused and maybe even put off because she said, couldn't you have just given me like a spa day gift instead? Or, we could go get a manicure together. And I thought that was hilarious because once she started working with me, she saw that that was actually a pattern in her life, that she had spent so much time tending to others' needs that she didn't really take time to think about who she was, what she really wanted to do. And doing that can be kind of scary because when we look at what we really want to do, sometimes that means making some changes, which can have ripple effects in our circle of family and friends.
It's funny that you say that. As you were first talking, I started to remember when my mother and stepfather passed away. They passed away 3 months apart. My stepfather was almost 104, and then my mother passed away 3 months later at 89. Both had lived long, full lives. My mother had Parkinson's and related dementia, and I was expecting it. I love both of them, but I was ready. I was ready to stop being a caregiver and everything else. And one of the first things I thought about after they died was, what am I going to do with all of this time that I am not going to be spending driving from the inn I owned? I do breakfast for the guests. I'd run out of the inn. I'd go over to take them to doctor's appointments or to do whatever. I'd leave at lunchtime, and then often I'd go back again for an hour or two in the afternoon to be with them. And I'm like, what am I going to do? How am I going to keep myself busy? And I had a 20-room inn that I was operating at the same time, but I was spending so much time with them and taking care of their needs that my day was planned. And it was very tough for the first week. But what I did, and I want to encourage people who can do this, my mother left me a little bit of money, and I was invited to go to a 3-day retreat in Paris. I had never been to Paris. I had also never traveled internationally alone. It was a wonderful way for me to be able to think about her, to process their lives, to process the loss, and to ask the big question, who am I now? What am I going to do now? How do I spend this time? Um, and especially for retirees, all of a sudden having time and time where you're not with the people that you've always been with. Nowadays, we spend so much time in our workplaces that that's often where our friends are. And our friends are in many ways more important than our family, or certainly more time consuming than our family.
Life quakes or life transitions and the aftershocks that follow are something we all experience. A life quake can stem from the heartbreaking grief that arises from the loss of a loved one or the disorientation felt when life suddenly shifts due to the loss of a job, relationship, identity, or health challenge. Learning to navigate these transitions with mindfulness, grace, and self-compassion is the key to finding your way back to joy, happiness, and inner peace. Advanced Grief Recovery Method Specialist and Certified Life Transition Coach, Amy Lindner-Lesser, MSW, expertly supports clients to navigate their life quakes and transitions with warmth, kindness, and grace. Learning to accept support as you navigate your way through the aftershocks is one of the most powerful gifts you can give yourself. Learn more at Inntrospection.com. That's Introspection.com.
Amy, I really love that you received that opportunity to go on retreat internationally in Paris, of all places. I mean, what a life-changing opportunity to just take some time away to breathe, to be with different people, to different scenery, to really get some perspective, especially in a time of such big change when you're asking big questions. And what you're speaking to is something that I have come to really value for myself and my clients, which is being in some sort of container of support when you're asking those big questions. And I really like what you said about being with people who are, different than our usual friends, family, colleagues, because in many ways, even though they may love you and support you and want the best for you, on some level, the people in our lives are invested in us staying pretty much the same because that's where the comfort level is. So, even though they say, oh, yeah, good for you, make this career change, they might be asking, what does this mean for me and our time together? So, being with someone who is, neutral and compassionate, like a coach or in a retreat setting, where you have the opportunity to speak your truth and be heard and kind of come home to yourself in some new ways. Those are the times and places and people where I have found that the truth can really shine, the clarity can come, and the healing can happen.
Manda, I love the term container of support. I can just see this big, beautiful vase with people who love you and care about you inside the vase, holding a space in the middle for somebody to be. And it's so true that the people you know the best are not the people who should be in that container of support because they've got their own personal agendas. They don't want you necessarily to make waves and to change. They want to stay comfortable. I've talked a little bit, I think on the podcast, I know I've talked in posts that I've written and in newsletters about the fact that I'm considering a move. And my closest friends are like, well, we'll support you with whatever you do, but why would you want to do that? Don't you want to move closer to us?
Yeah.
No, I really don't. Unless you all want to move where there's no more winter but it's true that in the back of everything I hear them saying is don't leave. And that's not having my best interest at heart. It's at a,
Mhm.
but
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And the wisdom that you have to know that there are other places you can get some support for big decisions like making a move. And of course they want you to move closer to them. They love you, they want the best for you, they want to be near you. And, your question is what's ultimately my truth? What's ultimately in my best interest? Because, even if you're not physically near your friends, you can still stay connected to them.
that's how I see them now. There are phones that work whether I live in North Carolina or New York or Massachusetts or
Yeah.
Pennsylvania or wherever. I'm not seeing them as much as I used to see them. And we know that we can still maintain relationships. And that's what everybody should be thinking about. And you mentioned that's why you need somebody who is not so connected, a professional like a coach, like a spiritual leader, somebody, a therapist, whoever, who is not so intertwined with your life and has no personal agendas.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So when you when you talk about who your clients are, what would you say the most common question is for you
Mm,
to you?
great question. Yeah, thank you. Well, I think it goes back to the ultimate question that we ask, especially when we're at big life changes, like who am I? What is my truth? And how can I live a more fulfilling life? Because so many of my clients are living maybe a good enough life. I'm thinking of one client in particular who's been employed for a long time in the financial industry. And she says, well, I kind of fell into this job and they kept promoting me and I don't really like it, but I'm getting paid well. And so for years, she just kept on this track almost by default. And yet at the same time, she was really getting more and more antsy and uncomfortable to do something different, even though, everything around her was saying, stay, her family and friends were not entertaining the idea of her doing what she was kind of secretly wanting to do, which was learn what had been learning how to do some healing techniques. And she really had a heart for wanting to help people in that way. And she had some big fears and questions about, well, one, can I make money doing this new work? Can I make a success of doing it? Should I even attempt to make a life change? She was a midlife woman at that point. So big questions. But it was getting more and more uncomfortable. And I like to use the analogy of when your shoes are too tight. For a while you can get away with it, maybe for an evening. But if you keep wearing those tight shoes, you're going to develop blisters, raw places. It's going to be more and more uncomfortable. It's not going to be easy to walk. And it's going to take a lot of your energy because you're going to be thinking about that pain and discomfort more and more the longer you wear those tight shoes. And so when we're in a place in our life that doesn't fit anymore, it starts to rub and rub some more and start causing some more and more discomfort on deeper levels. Those are opportune times to pause, to get some support from maybe a coach and be in a container of support. Go on a retreat where you can pause and breathe and reflect. Take those tight shoes off for a little while.
You may not ever get them back on, though.
You know what? That's why it can be kind of scary when we do reflect and think about the changes that we want to make. You're right. And that's what prevents a lot of people from making the changes is that a lot of us just kind of keep pushing through. I can do this until retirement. But why do we want to live lives like that? We're only given so many years.
I hope we don't want to do that. And I think that there's probably a big gender difference in this too. Men seem to not be willing to put up with things as for as long or as often as women do. I think, that goes along with the I can't make the decision, somebody's going to make it for me. Who am I? Everybody else is more important. I only work 40, 80 hours a week, whatever it is. I still have other time. And since both of us serve mostly women, I want to make sure that viewers and listeners are hearing this. We don't have to put up with something. We don't have to have the tight pair of shoes or the excruciating 6-inch heels. It's up to us. We need to be finding a life that fits us, that we're comfortable with. And as our lifespan has increased, it's no longer that we're looking at a 20-year career. We're now working from 20 to 80, maybe. That's a long time. It's a long time to be in uncomfortable shoes.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
And it's okay to make changes. Modern society no longer rewards long term employees. And that's a very sad reality, but it is reality that, the days of the gold watches and are
Mhm.
gone.
Mhm.
So, what that's saying to me, at least, is I need to put myself first. I need to worry about what's keeping me happy.
Yeah,
And
I agree, Amy. I think more and more these days, women especially are being invited into, this is a word that I like. It's not a very common word, but it's sovereignty, which means standing in our own power, which means being agents of our own lives. When, a while ago, that often wasn't even an option for women. You mentioned that earlier. A lot of the women who are elders now and are widowed didn't have the options that many of us have these days. And so, why not take advantage of these dreams and upwellings of hopes and opportunities that there are for us and not let fear stand in our way?
isn't it amazing that we now have this freedom to be able to look at all of the possibilities and to know that we could have even a series of possibilities? We could try something now for a few years or for a year and say, nope, wasn't the right thing. Now it's time. It's like what I'm doing with my move. I moved to where I am 4 years ago. It was the best option at the time. And 4 years later, I'm like, yeah, it no longer is the best place for me. So, okay, it's not bad. I didn't fail, but I'm looking for something better. And I'm going to change that. And I'm looking for something better instead of but.
That is really inspiring. I'm so glad that you are helping to lead the way and be a light for other women on this path. And, a lot of this is about self permission. Self permission. Yes, I can move again. I want to move. So I'm going to make some decisions and put some things in place toward making that happen.
And to giving ourselves a life that allows us to thrive and not just survive.
Yes.
That, just surviving sounds really depressing to me. It's like being in a snow globe that somebody is shaking so much that you're just trudging a little bit at a time. It's that blizzard that you can't move fast in, that you're stuck and you're going slowly. You may be moving an inch at a time, but it's going to take forever to get to where you want to be. And I want to believe that we want to have joy in our lives, that we want to thrive in our lives. And if we're working towards a goal of retirement, we need to be able to plan and have an idea in our heads of the things that we want to do with our time when we have it again. And if we're so busy trudging along in a blizzard in shoes that don't fit us, it's not going to happen.
Mhm.
That finding a new direction for our lives, whether it's a career or a hobby or a new church or synagogue, a place where you feel that you can belong is really important while you're doing everything else. And that's why coaching, you know, with you or with me is a good decision. That to get that outside person to help you see the things, the possibilities in life.
So see the possibilities to help hold the vision, to help you even connect with what it is that you want. Because one of the exercises I do with some of my clients, and I'll share this with all of you, with the listeners, this is something that you can do. And actually, I find that they often struggle with it because it's a different way of thinking, but it's very simple. It is taking out a piece of paper and a pen or a journal and writing three things. At the top, you write be, do, and have. And then under that, you're going to brainstorm all the things you want to do, all the things you want to be, all the things you want to have. For example, to do, I want to travel, I want to get a manicure. To be would be something like, I want to be happy, I want to be lighthearted, Or to have might be something like, I want to have a birthday party for myself. I want to have new shoes that fit well. But the funny thing is that we often don't give ourselves permission or time to even pause and contemplate those really basic things. Because when we know some of those pieces of our life, when we're in touch with what we want to be, what we want to do, and have, that is when things start to shift. That's when things start to open up.
I just want to give some direction to that, just in case some of the viewers and listeners don't know about brainstorming. When you brainstorm, it's really important that you do not censor anything. Every idea that comes to your head gets written down. We don't care how you spell things. We don't care if your handwriting is messy. We don't care if you say you want to go to the moon, whether you think it's possible or not. Write it down. And later on, you can go back and look at it. But, brainstorming is just spitting out ideas, and it's very freeing because it has been proven that what we think about tends to be what we attract. So if the idea that you're having seems so outrageous, but you really want it, there's someplace deep down inside that says, I really want to do this. By thinking about it, it can come true. So why throw the idea out and the possibility out before it's hit the air?
Thank you for that caveat, Amy. Absolutely. Brainstorm. We don't want to censor ourselves. And that's where the gold is when we just just allow things to bubble up. Oh, I didn't even know I wanted that. Yeah, just allow the flow to happen.
I know, Manda, that we're coming to our end, and I know that you have a generous free gift for our listeners. Can you tell us a little bit about it and how they can get it?
Thank you. I have free for downloading a intuitive decision making guide, how to tap into your inner wisdom to make decisions. Because so often, I mean, how many listeners can relate to second guessing ourselves after we make a decision, or circling and circling and circling around a decision and not not making it?
Or asking other people for their opinions, what you should do?
That's a big one too. What should I do about, yeah, giving your power away to someone else? What should I do about this? Well, we all have an internal guidance system. And I've seen it in my own life, I've seen it in my clients' lives. When we can tap into our inner knowing, that's where the wisdom really is. And so I put together a guide that has 7 really simple, creative ways that you can tap into your inner wisdom if you're facing a decision. And some of them are playful, some of them are a little more in depth, but they offer you an opportunity to listen inside and get clarity. And clarity is a big piece of what it means to live a fulfilled life, is when we have clarity about what we want to do, or it helps us make decisions, which helps us move forward in a more fulfilling life. So this free decision making guide can be found on my website at mydivineintuition.com/guide. mydivineintuition.com/guide.
And that will be in the show notes for everybody to be able to get. And I can tell you that I have done that. I've downloaded it and I've used it. And in addition, it helps you feel more secure in a decision that you've made, you know, and so that there isn't that second guessing. And I can tell you from my past, I tended to give my power away. I was always afraid to make that decision, and it cost me thousands and thousands of dollars and hours, emotional pain, not physical, but emotional. And all I had to do was listen to myself. My gut was telling me to do something different, and I didn't trust it. And it was because my decision of what to do was different from what other people were telling me all along. But I kept saying, no, I need to do this. And I gave the power away, and it was terrible. So I've learned, but it was very expensive. And I don't want anyone else to have to make costly decisions like that. Thanks for listening. We'll see you soon. Bye for now. If you liked what you heard on this podcast and want to hear more, please follow us and tell your friends. You can also find me on Facebook at Amy Lindner-Lesser, Grief to Growth Life Coaching, and on LinkedIn at Amy Lindner-Lesser.